All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second webinar in the Diversity and Customer Success series, Encouraging Diverse Hiring Practices. I'm Erica, and I will be your host and moderator. Before we dive in, though, I did want to ask everyone to take a moment to respond to the poll that we have here. When you finish that up, go ahead and drop your location in the chat if you're able to. I see that somebody said that it's disabled at the moment, so I'm not sure if that's accurate. But go ahead, everybody, and take a minute to respond to that poll. All right, awesome. Well, I think we have just about everybody has responded by this point. So let's see. It looks like majority of people here are already actively in a customer success role. So awesome, welcome. Let's see. First, I wanted to thank Success Coaching and Success in Black for working together to host this webinar. For those of you who aren't familiar with Success Coaching, they are a world leader in customer success training. Their mission is to reinvent the customer success training experience for leaders and customer success managers, making it accessible, effective, and actionable. They offer a variety of training options from self-paced online courses, live instructor-led boot camps, 12-week coaching programs, as well as live events such as CSM Mastermind and CS Leadership Roundtable. So to find out more about what Success Coaching can offer, please visit successcoaching.co. And I believe that link is, already in the chat. Thank you. Today, I am super proud to also be representing Success in Black. They are a new organization that is creating a platform for Black professionals in customer success. We aim to elevate Black professionals in customer success by providing powerful resources to help them advance their careers. So you can stay connected with us on LinkedIn and by signing up on our website. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. All right. So the call is going to be recorded. Please use the Q&A box for questions, and you can use the chat for other forms of conversation. So just any comments or anything like that, just keep it in the chat window. And Success Coaching actually is going to be offering the replay of the webinar. So you're going to be able to access it post-event by accessing their website. From here on, we can jump to our panelists. So I'd like to hear from them and let them introduce themselves at this point.
Sure, I could start. Hi, I'm Edie Greenberg, she, her, and I am a recruiter with Hustle Hunters, a startup recruitment firm, really focusing on partnering with early stage startups to build their early stage teams. And I am based in Chicago, Illinois.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rochelle or Shelly Sherrilds, she, her. I currently lead a global customer success team at an organization called Medrio. Medrio is a leading e-clinical technology provider whose mission is making life easier for clinical researchers and trial participants through a full service solution technology.
And I am Erit Nsemo. I am currently the Director of Customer Success at Hologram, which is an IoT connectivity provider. I have been working in customer success for well over a decade now, and I am based in Chicago.
All right, thank you all so much. So I wanted to kick off this discussion and by posing this question to the three of you. So I wanted to ask about the benefits and the business case of having a diverse customer success team. So what would be the primary reasoning for an organization to have this initiative?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So customer success typically it's a revenue org. Most of the time, customer success teams are managing the post-sale relationship, retaining customers, optimizing upsell opportunities, sharing best practices, basically making the product as efficient and good as possible for your customers so you can keep those dollars in the business. And so just from a straight revenue perspective, diverse teams, there's been studies done on this, they perform better. They just do. They're more likely, companies that have diverse teams have higher top line revenue growth overall. So just from a straight business case and dollars and cents, it's a really good business reason to have a diverse customer success team. But apart from that, in general, innovation goes up when you have different perspectives on the team. If everybody comes from the same background, the same experience, the same industry, you're all kind of talking in a circle and it becomes an echo chamber. As soon as you start to add more diverse voices, whether that is gender or race or ethnic background or country of origin or different industries that they've come from outside of tech, you automatically start to kind of pivot innovation in a really significant way that I don't think is really possible without having a diverse customer success team and initiatives to grow those teams in a diverse way.
Absolutely, Erin. I completely share your sentiments there. And to your point, countless studies are available, right? That speaks to the benefit of having a diverse organization. But I think at the baseline, every organization should seek to have an employee base that looks like their customer base, right? Customers are diverse. And so I think start there. You wouldn't, in order to have that bottom line increase, right? And to be impactful from a bottom line and revenue perspective, you need multiple and various perspectives to create products that are going to sell to a diverse customer base. So I would say start there. And then it's a twofold approach. Not everyone sees the value of simply or organizations marketing that having a diverse organization is because they want to contribute to the bottom line. So that's where belonging comes in. It's not always about revenue. Organizations should also seek to encourage a sense of belonging.
Sure, and I could add to that. I think customer success is one of those departments that really allow people to break into tech because they are able to come from other occupations, other industries, and we work a lot with early stage founders who sometimes seek out those who have like that, the non-traditional background, because they know that it helps them, as I think Eric mentioned, just be innovative, just bringing new ideas to the table. And then also what Shelley said, it's important to have that diverse representation that the customer, similar to the customer base, internally on a customer success team. Erica, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you all for answering that. And to kind of circle back to what Shelley was saying, do any of you have any advice for confronting personal and organizational biases in hiring to drive home that belonging piece?
Yeah, I can jump in there. I would say that I think it's okay for us to acknowledge that everyone has a sense of bias, right? It's very easy to work with individuals that are like you. I think that's the default, and that's okay, which is why you need diversity, right? So I would say start with your HR team, so your people team, and get their commitment in diversity, right? Because you're not going to be effective if you try to do it alone. You need that organizational buy-in. And so I would say partner with your people team and take inventory, right? Where are their gaps? And not just from a race perspective. It diversity encapsulates so many different things. And so I would say take inventory, and there has to be an organizational commitment, but the people team would lead that effort.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And on more of like the candidate side, to speak to some people that are the majority of our audience who are already in customer success positions, do you have any tips for interrupting that bias and driving that change on a more individual level?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So something that I found to be really successful on an individual candidate level, whether you are interviewing for a new customer success role or even pivoting within your own organization, is storytelling. And so being able to, as a candidate, really tell the story of how wherever you've been in your career in the past has led you to have the skills that work for a customer success team. So, you know, some of the best CSMs I've ever hired, one was a nanny, one was a prison guard, one came from consulting. But being able to tell that story not only helps the hiring manager and internal teams who maybe are also on an interview panel that aren't necessarily used to that maybe non-traditional background, helps them see how you fit, but it also kind of showcases your CSM skills, because so much about being a CSM is actually about storytelling, using data, using the product. So I would say get really good at getting your story down and tell it really proudly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think ways that candidates can do that is in the summary section of their LinkedIn profile. Because many times we do want to have a better understanding of you other than your places of employment and your job titles. And sometimes when they're able to kind of bring it together to tell us, what their journey has been, what their interest is, and why customer success seems like a natural next step for them, that is important for us to see. And if they're able to tell it in a concise way in a story telling format, that's always so appreciated. Cover letters get a bad rap on LinkedIn. Everybody's like, companies shouldn't require cover letters. I actually like cover letters just because it tells a little bit more than just what the resume portrays. And it allows them to give more information about themselves if they were not given that opportunity to do it in a phone screen. So I say take advantage of that. Any opportunity that you're able to kind of share your story and make yourself kind of stand out as why your unique background can lend itself to a customer success role, I think is always a big plus.
Yeah, I would just add, I love Erin's storytelling. I think that like personally, that has always been something that I've been working on, because it like that's how you connect and leave a lasting impression. So I absolutely agree with that. And I would also just add, know your strengths, right? There are so many free assessments online that will help you identify what your strengths are. So know your strengths and be ready to tie those to relevant customer success best practices when you're having these conversations, right? So even if you are an entry-level candidate, you have experience. So for example, if you are a recent graduate, talk about how you showed up in team activities or talk about your experience in extracurricular activities, right? So were you a team captain? Talk about what you did to contribute to the success of the team. Or if you are already a professional and you're looking to switch careers in customer success, that means that you have had at least one performance review. And so you at least had one instance of someone telling you that you are good at X. Highlight those, right? So take some time to reflect on the specific instances where those strengths had an opportunity to shine. Go back to your performance reviews and read and just call that out and be ready to talk about those, right? And even customer interactions. If you have been in a customer facing role, not necessarily customer success, and a customer has given you praise for something that you've done for them, talk about it. Don't be afraid to highlight those instances.
That is amazing. And I definitely agree with Kenny. I'm going to put that in my own arsenal and tell that to my own candidates. So I wanted to talk to each a little bit more about how your experience with accessing diverse pools of candidates has been. And do you have any tips on ways to build that skill set for other people in their own hiring?
I could start. So there, very recently, I would say as a result, of the pandemic, there have been many people who have been changed their careers. Teachers, I think, is one where they're pivoting out of education and into a role that they can use those transferable skills. And I've seen it all over LinkedIn, how they are transitioning into customer success roles. So that allows us to have a different pool of candidates just right there, because, they're not from the traditional, career path. And Erin and Shelley, you could probably answer this, but, customer success, that role didn't exist like 10 years ago, right? I mean, that's a fairly new department. So I'm not really sure. I would guess that people who have been in customer service type of roles or like account management type of roles, would move into that. But, I think just being open-minded to those coming out of a different industry altogether has allowed us to talk to candidates, with various different backgrounds, and that, can be, race, gender, just industry, all of that.
Yeah, one of the things at Metrio that I was able to create is a more junior role. And so when we think about like enterprise CSMs, that does take someone who actually has quite a bit of customer success experience. But I would say that I think a lot of organizations are also doing this, right? Look for more junior roles, like a customer success specialist or a customer success associate, those types of titles, right? Because what you will find is there is more room for an acceptance of candidates who don't actually have that specific experience. So I would say start there. Another thing that I would say, hiring managers are also looking for candidates who can help them scale, right? So that was something that I've experienced at Metrio is I was looking for candidates who had strong process documentation experience or who thrives on process, right? Because when you're scaling a team, you need to document, you need best practices, you need to be creating templates and playbooks, and all that comes from folks who thrive on process. So I would say get creative, but the roles are out there. You just gotta get a little bit more creative.
I think some other entry-level roles would be like an onboarding specialist, an implementation specialist. Do you have those roles at your organizations?
I have historically had a lot of luck with recruiting more diverse candidates into exactly what you're saying, onboarding manager, implementation, because to Shelley's point, there's so much process involved with that and also project management. So if you were a project manager at a lot of different types of organizations, you can do project management on a customer success team. And there's also Let's not forget like CS operations. So if you find someone who's really analytical, really good with reporting, really like wants to present that and kind of build out an operations org, that's another really critical role to scale a CS org. So it's probably not the earliest hire you're going to make as a director because you're doing other things, but CS ops is also a really good place for diverse candidates to kind of enter into CS.
Perfect. Thank you. And on the candidate side, what are some of the ways that an individual would be able to increase their access to opportunities, either externally or internally?
So I would say join organizations like Success in Black, right? Because you automatically are connected to so many different types of folks who have, even you can network with a customer success specialist in a group, and they can tell you about roles that they've either applied for, if their company is hiring. So it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to connect with a hiring manager, right? We are bombarded with requests from folks who are trying to break into customer success. I would say leverage organizations like Success in Black and become a part of a community and network with people who have various types of roles. They also have that leverage.
Yeah, completely agree with Shelley as far as just taking advantage of the organizations out there and the different communities that already exist, and just engaging with those who are already in the profession, because there are some out there who would love to mentor or just really give back because someone gave them the opportunity. And then also just from, different conversations that you'll be able to read, like, for example, like a Slack community or Reddit, you're able just to kind of pick up on what's trending and just find out where there might be a gap and, being able to upskill, knowing what is needed to be a successful customer success representative.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I would just add just simply following the customer success hashtag on LinkedIn. There's a ton of really good content from like some pretty interesting and impactful thought leaders. And there's a lot to learn just by their posts, honestly, but they also are often posting about jobs or webinars or things that they're involved in. And if you're comfortable, get into the comments and ask questions, start conversations, because they want that engagement if they're starting to share like that. So that's a really good way to start building bridges a little bit more authentically, maybe, than some of the other ways that people have been encouraged to in the past.
Absolutely. And on your end, what are some of the things that you've done to drive cultural change to support a more diverse workforce?
Yeah, I could start. So when I started, first off, I lead with diversity. So when I join an organization, they know that diversity is a primary core value of mine. And I don't apologize. I make that very known. So I would say when you are looking as a hiring manager to staff your team, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is take inventory of gaps, right? And sit down with your HR leader, which is what I did. And I said, here's the thing. Here's what my team looks like. Here are the skill sets that I have currently. Here's what I need to accomplish by the end of the year. Here are the gaps. Here are the types of individuals that I need. And they were amazing at working together because the thing about diversity, unless you find and you have the budget to work with a recruiting firm that focuses on diversity, the candidate pool can be a little bit more difficult to identify. And so it really has to be a partnership between your people team to really understand what type of candidate you are looking for or candidates you are looking for, and getting help with that. Be upfront in terms of how you want your team to be, and hopefully that aligns with the organization that you're in. But I would say start there.
I totally agree, Shelley. When I walk into any job interview, the first thing that I lead with diversity almost every time. And I think being really loud and vocal about it and not being afraid of being loud and vocal about it is one thing. And then I'm very lucky at Hologram. The people team has been amazing, and diversity has been an initiative for quite some time now. But I love the idea of identifying those gaps, because people don't typically take the time to do that. And then once you've got the framework of the gaps that are identified, I think just giving constant feedback to maybe your recruitment team or people team, if they're sending a bunch of candidates your way that aren't quite hitting the mark in whatever the categories are that you've identified, give them feedback on that, because recruiters want to fill the role. Like, that's what they want to do. That's literally their job, but also that is what gives them energy. They get excited about that. So if you work really well with them and are constantly like, well, actually, I'd like to see more of this skill set, or I need a little bit more years of experience, or any of the things that you care about, it's like a constant feedback loop between you and your people team.
Sounds like Shelley and Eric would be like the ideal hiring managers to work with. So I love that, you both lead with diversity. And I just kind of blanked out on what my next comment was going to be. But, I do think that now that there are more remote opportunities, that too has really kind of opened up, being able to present a diverse pool of candidates. And that includes, those who, for example, are, have a disability, for example. So not going into an office is, a big deal, because they have all of the necessary accommodations to do their job, in their own home. So it really does allow us to be able to recruit a larger pool of candidates. And so when we work with hiring managers, that is something that we try to encourage is, if the opportunity can be remote. And I think that's all I have. I think that the thing that I blanked out will come back to me at some point, and I'll interject.
I actually wanted to add a quick comment, because I saw that Clara in the comments mentioned that there is a diverse interview panel. That's a huge one. That's a really, really big deal. So I look at the interview panel for my roles, and my team historically has been relatively diverse, so it hasn't been as difficult. But I notice if the interview panel is not diverse, I will speak up and say something about it, because that really does matter. It really matters. And it matters to the candidate as well, because to Shelley's point earlier, like, once they get in the door, you have to have a culture of belonging. And so if they interview with a bunch of people that all look the same, but not like them, it's much harder to get them to agree to accept the role. And it's much harder to retain them once they're in the building.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, sometimes it happens by default if you have a very diverse organization, but I do think that it should be prioritized. I love that.
And I guess if you don't already have one, it might be appropriate just to even call it out, just, saying, that they're not there yet, but that you're working towards it, because, you do have to get there. So, not to scare people away who don't currently have a diverse workforce, because it's not too late to adjust that.
Absolutely. So I want to get to the Q&A. So we're a little bit ahead, but we have a few very good questions that I think the three of you are going to have a fun time answering. So for everyone else, if you have any other questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to get to them. So have you experienced high attrition rates for BIPOC employees? If so, how did you report on it and what strategy did you use to address it?
So I can jump in on this one. Yeah, actually, I have a story about this. So I hired a diverse team a couple companies ago, and then I moved to a different opportunity within the org, but was not managing that team anymore. And within a year, both of the women that I had hired had quit. And having conversations with folks after the fact, it's really clear that if you're not really paying attention to how you're building a culture of belonging without tokenizing folks, without asking them to be the only person that speaks up when certain topics come up, all of these things. And of course, we're all going to be learning. But if you aren't making a very concerted effort to be aware of that kind of stuff and call it out when you see it happening on your team, you can definitely experience high attrition with BIPOC employees. Absolutely. And then I think another thing to bear in mind is that as a hiring manager, if you're a candidate looking to join an org, I would really dig in on asking questions to your hiring manager about how they have advocated for their team in the past, whether that's with career opportunities, promotions, learning and development, even socially in the org, like things that come up, because if they don't have examples or kind of an ethos about that, I would be a little bit concerned. So being sure that during the interview process as a candidate, you're really seeking out someone who is going to be able to tell you how they would advocate for you, essentially, in all the ways that matter to you. And that will help a little bit in terms of understanding the culture of belonging, because that's unfortunately one of the hardest things to assess as a candidate is like, will I belong here? It's really hard to know that before you walk in the door. So it's good to try to prep ahead of time and ask the interviewer as much as you can.
All right. And what are some of the some phrases that we could use to encourage interview teams that we're either a part of or working with to take on the storytelling aspect into account? Or sorry, to take the storytelling aspect of a candidate's background into account.
So something that I have tried to do in the past is encourage the interview panel to take the job titles out of their heads and just look at the individual actions that the person has done, the actual experience. So if someone was like a neuroscientist in the past and they're applying for a CSM role, this actually happened in my org, like take the neuroscience out of it and look at like what the person did on their resume and then align it to what the job requirements are, because often that will automatically have to shift you more to the story and away from, do they have this job title? Did they do the specific exact things that we need? I found that to be a little bit helpful.
We've been lucky that we've worked with some great hiring managers who are very curious about people's story. So to Eric's point, when candidates are able to tell that in a way that is compelling and it makes them a more unique candidate. So sometimes that's something that they already embrace, that everybody has a different story. A different path, and love to be able just to learn a little bit more about like, why did you move from neuroscience, with all that education into customer success? And, sometimes the answers are just fascinating. And, if you just think about, the skills that you bring from, one career to another, I mean, there are so many transferable skills. So it's really being able to showcase that.
I would say one of the things that we do at Medrio is we have a set of questions that you have to ask during each interview. So it removes the bias, right? And it's specifically related to the job description, right? So we sit down, the hiring manager, the people team sits down and really challenges, we challenge each other if these questions are actually relevant to be asking. And then we have about 3 to 4 rounds. So each round, there are a set of questions that we have to ask the candidate. So in terms of me coming to an interview and asking the questions that I feel are important to me that day, just having those preset questions really, really help. And so that's a way that you can not only remove the bias, but also incorporate that storytelling aspect.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I, I'm also a recruiter, so I find it hard not to like participate in the panel too. So what do you all see as the biggest learning curve for folks transitioning into CS? And do you have any solutions or recommendations for flattening that curve?
Oh gosh. So I think in general with customer success, because it's so new, and just as an industry, we are constantly evolving our best practices, is not getting overwhelmed in your first 90 days. It is very easy to get overwhelmed even before you get into a role. And if you're active on LinkedIn, I know there's a whole TikTok community. I'm not on TikTok, but I know there's like a whole TikTok customer success community. There is so much information and it can get overwhelming. So what I would recommend your first 90 days is getting clarity on what success looks like for that month, for that quarter, and challenge, right? So if something goes outside of that, ask your manager, be okay with asking, should I be focusing on what you just mentioned, communicated was a priority, or the priority that you mentioned last week, right? It's something that I'm guilty of. And thankfully my team is great at challenging me, but I would say making sure that you have clarity on what success means for your role, and especially in that first 90 days.
I would add to that, if you're specifically for tech customer success, if you're coming from a different background, tech orgs are often, you've got the product team, you've got marketing, you sometimes have sales engineering. There's a lot of different like departments and teams that people who are newer to CS might not know how to work with, how to communicate with. So I would spend some time getting to know how your role also interacts with other roles in the company, particularly products. I have a soft spot for product, but you can be a really powerful CSM if you know how to work really well with a product team, but that is a skill and it's a learning curve for sure. So I actually took like a software product management certification course when I was like earlier in my career to like get up to speed. So that might be a little bit, maybe not, you don't have to do that, but I would get a sense of how your role interacts with other roles in the org, because it'll just give you a good sense of how customer success works overall.
And, there are some organizations that exist. It's almost like a, customer success boot camp that, is offered for those who are looking to transition and get those foundational skills. So that might be something that people want to look into. And, exactly what Eric said, there is customer success touches so many different departments within an organization, and that would be definitely an important thing to have a good understanding of each department and the role that they play with each department. I think is a great focus when you first start a new customer success role.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of a person who is in a customer success org, so what would you recommend that they look for in success orgs in terms of growth opportunities and professional development?
I would ask questions about career pathing. That's because customer success is so new. There's not always an obvious career path, even to the people in the org. Like I'm guilty of this with my team where I'm like, what is next? So I would hopefully there's someone on your team that's making it a priority to work with the people team, but definitely leverage the people team to talk about what kind of things you want to do next, and then work with your hiring manager to find out what is the next step in the career, what are the options, and then also what you need to do to get there specifically. So I think, for example, do I need to hit specific goals? Is there a specific course you want me to take? And then get commitment from them that this is the pathway that you want to be on. Because it can get very gray very fast with CS because there's so many different roles, there's so many different directions you can go into. And also I wouldn't rule out moving from customer success. I think it was Edie that said it's a good way to get into tech in the first place because it's a non-technical role in most companies. Don't rule out going from customer success to sales or to implementation or even to product. Because that's also an opportunity because CSMs are so uniquely positioned in the org. They can kind of go in any direction. So it gets really gray unless someone has like very deliberately set out career pathing. And I don't think I've been at an org that's done it super well, admittedly, but we try our best.
Yeah, I would 110% agree with that. And I wouldn't even add anything to that. I would say before you get into a customer success role, make sure that you're not just getting into it because it's the shiny new tool. I feel like that's happening a lot. And when I have conversations with folks, the reasoning is not, it just doesn't translate. So I would say really, really do your work and understand if you are absolutely passionate about customer success. It's not an easy job because it's not always clearly defined. There's a lot of gray. And so really do your homework and understand if you want to actually be in customer success, especially if you're switching careers, because you don't want to have buyer's remorse and switch a career and get in this role and it's not for you. So have conversations with folks who are already there if you're looking to break in. But I would say before you are even in that role, just make sure this is where you want to be.
And I think just having customer success experience, so even if it isn't the role for you, is always a big plus. So know that it was still worth having that opportunity to be in that type of role, because it's always, a good skill to have in any job that you take from then on.
Yeah. And are there any weaknesses or gaps that you consider or that any of you consider to be a deal breaker when someone is interviewing for a CSM position? And what would you say are the key strengths for someone that is interviewing?
So at the very beginning, so, from a recruiter perspective, so this is before they advance to a hiring manager interview, I for sure, presentation skills is something that is going to be considered in the process. Sometimes it's through like a Zoom interview where they just want to see if you are able to, command that Zoom room or, just a meeting, and, how you're able to interact with a client. So, I think that's something that people should be aware of, that if they're going to be in the interview process, that's probably something that's going to be closely assessed. So that's the one thing I could add.
It's funny because I am actually at a company-wide meetup right now. And one of the exercises that we are doing are Strengths Finder, right? And even within my team, we hit on every spectrum of the strengths. So I honestly, I don't think there are weaknesses. What translates for me in the countless interviews that I had is the energy. your enthusiasm. I can teach you how to do all the presentation and how to story tell even. Are you excited about this opportunity? And is that translating in your energy? That's going to translate to customers. When you're in front of a customer, they know. And so I would say it starts with being enthusiastic and your energy. Right? Like, are you excited about this opportunity? And is that going to be sustainable when you have difficult conversations with customers?
Yeah, I would add being cool under pressure as a really, really important quality. Like Shelley said, CS is not an easy job. People think it is because it sounds like cute, but it's not an easy job. And like I have been yelled at, I have been in high pressure situations, I have had really tough things happen. And so being able to stay cool under pressure and maintain that empathy is a huge thing. And I think it's hard, it can be hard to suss that out. I do have interview questions that suss it out though. But that would be a deal breaker. I think if someone wasn't able to like maintain composure or know how to get their composure back, right? Like we're all going to lose it every once in a while, but like know how to get themselves back to center is a really, really important quality for a CSM.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is more for Shelley and Eric. But what were the steps that you took to get into customer success initially? Like why customer success?
So I was actually a non-traditional CS candidate. I'm a writer, and I was applying for a content editor job at a tech company. And I interviewed with the head of customer success, which was called client services at the time, but it was the same thing. And she asked me a question. She actually asked me a question, do I work more like this or more like this? And she like waved her hands. And I answered her like this. And she's like, I think I'm going to steal you for my team. And I had no idea what her team was or what I was being stolen for. But it was because of the energy I gave. I'm pretty sure that was the offer. And so I actually went into a CS role in that way and then just kind of grew from there. So I was not interviewing for a customer success role. I was interviewing for an editor position, and it just kind of pivoted my entire career because of that one interview. And because I was willing to be like, yeah, I'll try it out and see what happens. So yeah, that's how I got started in customer success. And then it's just evolved from there.
I love that story. Do you get to use your writing skills a lot?
For a long time, for the first role that I was in, I was writing like marketing copy for a customer. So I did like writing for them. And then in all subsequent roles, I've always like written for the blog, for the company, things like that. So I've incorporated it, but I ended up loving customer success and wanting to dive into that. Yeah.
Yeah, so my journey into customer success was kind of all over the place. I have a good amount of experience in customer support. And then I transitioned to project management and then relationship management and now customer success. So I guess you could say customer success is kind of a hybrid of all of those roles. But yeah, that's my journey to customer success.
So one thing to point out, as Eric mentioned, so when you do talk to a recruiter, there are many times that we're like in our head, or even the hiring managers are like, oh my God, you would be perfect for, customer success. And sometimes it is something that candidates are not even familiar with. They don't even know what is customer success. So that's just something to point out is when we do talk to candidates and, we learn from them, what really kind of piques their interest and, as far as what they'd like to be doing. Sometimes it is part of our job to share with them, like, have you ever thought about this, route? And I just love the success story that you shared, Eric, that it just completely kind of changed the direction of your career and you love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Both of you are basically living by example. And last question here to kind of close us up here. Do either of you have any recommendations on about like Slack communities or any other external sources that people can connect to?
So one that is very big and can be a little overwhelming, but is like really informative is Gain, Grow, Retain. That's like a really popular one, like pretty common, but there's a ton of information there. So it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, I would say. But that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. I can't think of a Slack community right now for some reason.
The Gain, Grow, and Retain, there are some thought leaders who you can follow. And they also, put out great content. I feel like there is a women in customer success Slack community, because I think I've joined that one in the past to try to get some candidates for roles. But it really is a pretty straightforward search just to find like active communities, online communities, and within customer success that you can find some.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And to everybody who is not on the panel, if you have any Slack communities or anything like that you're a part of and you want to recommend to other people, feel free to put them in the chat. We're here to connect. Awesome. Well, let's see. We wanted to thank all of our guests as well as our panelists, especially our panelists, for making this such a great discussion. We hope that everybody got something out of it. And we definitely want to end this discussion by urging you to continue to invest in yourself. Never stop. Please follow Success in Black on LinkedIn to stay connected on our programs and events. And also please check out Success Coaching's website, particularly if you are in a transitional space and you're looking to get into the CSM world, for more detailed and information on what they can offer to you. And panelists, if you had any closing statements, final thoughts that you wanted to add here, please feel free.
Yeah, please, don't hesitate to connect with us on LinkedIn. I know that, like Shelley mentioned, sometimes hiring managers can get overwhelmed, from candidates who are looking to break into customer success. Feel free to contact either Erica or myself, because we're really that person who loves to talk to candidates who are trying to break into customer success, or even if you're already in it, wanting to just take that next step. So feel free to reach out to either of us through Hustle Hunters, and we're both on LinkedIn and happy to connect.
Erin, Shelley, was there anything that you wanted to add? Any final thoughts on your part?
No, it was a great conversation, and thank you. Yes, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. My response may be delayed if you send me a message, but I will definitely, I'm committed to getting back and helping any way that I can. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. It's been a really lovely conversation. I will just say, you probably have what it takes to do what you want to do. So just like really lean into yourself on this. If you really want to be in CS or whatever it is, like you have the skills, you can find what you need to get there. It's just a matter of connecting, and it'll all flow as it's meant to flow.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone who has attended. We definitely hope to see you in our next session.